everyone. It is day 12 of our Lenten practice, 40 words from 40 days. You're kind of getting a glare from my glasses, but at this age, I need them to read. So, day 12 is bread. So, as many of you know, bread is one of my favorite things, and as disciples of Christ, being people of the table, bread is an important part of our spirituality and as part of a world who hungers. It's a really impactful thing for me and my ministry. The verse today is Matthew 6, verse 11. Give us this day our daily bread. And I'm going to read you kind of a step into an interfaith space today. And it is probably my favorite poem in the world from a Buddhist poet. So we're going to step into a space after National Women's Day, which was Monday, into kind of a space where we are in a political climate that is really, really charged this season. We know the world is hungering, but also we have to think about, a space where a lot of the world is concerned about COVID-19 and what that means for people that cannot afford medical care. But I'm going to read you just probably the first really big chunk of an ode to bread. And if you feel like seeking the rest of it out, it's a pretty long poem. And I read this when we dedicated on the spring solstice in Winston-Salem at Wake Forest. So, an ode to bread by Pablo Neruda. Bread, you rise from flour, water, and fire, dense or light, flattened or round. You duplicate the mother's rounded womb and earth's twice yearly swelling. How simple you are, bread, and how profound. You line up on the baker's powdered trays like silverware or plates or pieces of paper, and suddenly life washes over you. There's the joining of seed and fire, and you're growing all at once, like hips, mouths, breasts, mounds of earth, or people's lives. The temperature rises, you're overwhelmed by fullness, the roar of fertility, and suddenly your golden color is fixed. And when your little wombs were seeded, a brown scar laid its burn the length of your two halves, toasted juncture. Now, whole, you are mankind's energy, a miracle, often admired, the will to live itself. And there are still two more and a partial stanza to that poem. But the author writes, in this prayer that Jesus teaches his disciples, he invites them to ask for daily bread. The request points us towards our utter dependence on God for sustaining our lives. This phrase emphasizes God's provision. God offers us what we really need on a daily basis. What are those specific things that we honestly need right now? To ask for these things is what beloved children do naturally when they turn to the one they call Father. And Abba was the word for yesterday, so Father. It's what Jesus called out to God as multiple times, but even on the cross. We simply ask our Heavenly Parent for what we need for today, or we ask for what we need now. And so I studied, I don't know how many of you know, but I studied food and faith as my concentration in seminary. But if we think about what bread used to be kind of almost a complete meal. And it's kind of been reduced over time to kind of air and Um, the grain has kind of been reduced, but it used to be a whole sustaining food. And when we're asking for bread, when we're consuming bread, um, it used to be more sustaining. So this verse really had a lot of meaning, right? Give us this day our daily bread, meaning that you could consume bread and it would sustain you all the day long. It would sustain you until tomorrow. So when the gospel writer writes, give us this day our daily bread, the author is saying to God, the heavenly parent, give me everything I need to sustain me to tomorrow, till tomorrow. That daily physical bread, that physical nutrition, but also the spiritual nutrition. So when we're asking God, what do we need when we pray this prayer? What do we need to be sustained until tomorrow? What is that? So I think that's a really beautiful kind of space to be in. Um, and the daily practice is at one meal time today, cut a slice of bread. But I think it's interesting. How many of us have a loaf of bread at home that we can cut? But cut a slice of bread, eat it, give thanks to the God who sustains you with every breath you take. If you don't have that, see if you've got, I would challenge you to see if you've got the nutrition, the elements, the ingredients to make a loaf of bread that you can cut. Do you have something that you can make a quick bread with? Can you make banana bread? Can you make some sort of quick bread that you can actually cut? I love that New Disciples is posting something to me, and I do have sunlight coming in this window. This is really great. I switched to the back office right after I got here because there was no window in the front. Can you make bread that you can cut? Can you cut a piece of bread and savor it in order to be sustained by it? And I think that's what the gospel writer was actually talking about. So to ponder that, to think about what it would mean to have a bread that sustained you spiritually, and what does it mean to be sustained by bread. So anyway, thanks folks. You'll have a word of the day tomorrow. I don't necessarily vlog or Facebook Live them all. Sometimes we just, it's not always me that posts them. But sometimes it's just a little quick reflection online. But I hope that you are being enriched and praying through this Lenten season as I am. We get 40 days in prayer life with God, just as Jesus spent in the wilderness, just as the Israelites went through the wilderness with God. And hopefully we are enriched through that deep spiritual practice. Bye-bye.